Are you ready? I stood in the hallway and shouted the question to my wife, who was in the bedroom. In her usual quirky way, she poked her head out so I could see her eyes, but not the bottom half of her face. She wiggled her eyebrows. I laughed. Well, hurry up, we're gonna be late. Lori and I had been together for nearly 15 years. She grew up across the street, my own personal girl next door. We had been best friends since we were 5, and I had been in love with her for as long as I could remember. I proposed on graduation day, and the rest was magic. But when you've been together as long as we have, it takes work to keep that magic alive sometimes. So we decided a few years ago that every week we would leave the house and go do something juvenile. Sometimes it was as simple as going out to the cornfields on the edge of town and watching the moon rise and the stars twirl for a while. Tonight, however, our mission was a little more junior high. We were going to fork someone's yard. Where we come from, when kids get up to some shenanigans, they don't egg the dean's house or teepee their neighbor's trees. We pick up a dozen boxes of plastic forks, and under the cover of nightfall, we meticulously plant those forks in someone's front lawn. The trick is to push them deep enough into the dirt that the poor homeowner can't just grab the rake to clean them up. They have to pick them up by hand, one by one. Some people have date night. We have our thing. We made our way out into the darkness, dressed like ninjas. We snuck around the neighborhood until Lori stopped. She stared quizzically. The only part of her face not covered by the mask were her narrowed eyes and her furrowed eyebrows. Dave, who lives here? I don't know. An older lady, I think. Weird. What? I glanced between Lori and the house. We've lived here our whole lives. I've been down this street thousands of times, but I can't remember ever seeing anyone here. No one walking in and out or standing in the yard or cars in the drive, but there's always that light on up there. I looked up and saw one light on in the whole house. Probably a bedroom, right? Maybe she's a reader. Lori sighed and went through the gate. We are not forking this old woman's yard. Lori shook her head and dropped her backpack, walking towards the house. She heard me, but only kind of. I sighed heavily and followed. Always the dutiful husband. If she was getting arrested for wandering around some old shut-in's property, I might as well get arrested with her. As I caught up to Lori, she motioned towards the front porch. I hadn't noticed it before, perhaps because it was nearly midnight on a moonless night, but the front door was open, swaying slightly in the cool breeze. I shivered. All the juvenile excitement from before left my body and was replaced by a creeping uneasiness. Lori walked towards the open door and took off her mask. Hello? Is anyone there? Your front door is open. I followed her onto the porch. Suddenly, a woman's head popped out from behind the door. Not her whole head, just the top, so I couldn't see the lower half of her face. Her hair was long and silvery, stringing off in every direction, as if it hadn't been brushed in a week. Her skin was gray and pale, but surprisingly smooth, except for the crow's feet in the corners of her eyes. Her gray eyes gleamed in the dark. Lori stepped forward. Ma'am, are you okay? We saw your door and we were concerned. The old woman disappeared, scurrying off behind the door, leaving it open behind her. Without looking back, Lori bounded inside. Babe, wait! Let's call 911. What if she's having some medical emergency or something? Then we need to get inside and try to help. I rushed in after her. There were dirt tracks on the floor, showing where the woman shuffled around regularly. The stairs that led up to the second floor, however, had an undisturbed layer of dust, seemingly several years old. I guess that explains why that light is always on. I muttered to myself as I scanned around for where my wife had gone. I left the door open and jogged to my right. For an older woman, she was spry. She had gotten out of sight in a matter of seconds. Lori stood in the next room, mouth agape. I came up next to her and followed her gaze. The old woman was once again peeking out from behind a corner. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. and the rasping wheeze of her breathing was the only sound she made. After a moment, she yelped like a wounded dog and ran out of sight again. That startled both of us, but we ran after her, certain now that she was having an episode of some kind. When we arrived where we had last seen her, we found ourselves at an intersection between the kitchen, a den, a large family room, and a branching hallway. I silently pulled out my phone to call the authorities. Like a flash, the old woman darted into view out of nowhere at waist height, jumping around on all fours. She swatted my phone away, shattering it against the wall. She croaked. She stopped, only to bite Lori's calf before racing away. I heard the front door slam shut as I caught the falling Lori. "What the hell, you old bat?" I shouted. "We only wanted to help." Lori's leg was bleeding, but despite the injury, her focus was elsewhere. "Dave," she said fearfully, pointing behind me. I turned, following a dark, muddy trail of footprints across the floor, onto the wall, and across the ceiling. They stopped at a shadow in the corner. When my eyes reached the shadow, the old woman growled and leapt at me from the ceiling. "What the—" I couldn't even finish my sentence. My wife scrambled out of my arms as the old woman slammed into my chest, clawing and biting at me. My backpack ripped open as I hit the floor, spilling plastic forks all around. Lori came over to pull the woman off of me, but she backhanded my wife away so hard she flew into the next room. I heard her hit the wall and grunt. I was able to kick the woman off me, and I flipped over and tried to stand and run away. She tripped me up, grabbing my ankle and biting into it hard. A white-hot pain jolted up my leg, and I looked down to see her blood-stained smile. She dragged me closer to her by my leg, and I tried to kick her again. In that moment, I found the leg she had bitten had gone numb, and I couldn't move it at all. I swatted at her, and she flipped me onto my stomach. I clawed helplessly at the floor, trying to find anything to hold on to and pull myself away. I felt her talon-like fingers dig into my legs, pulling me closer hand over hand. Her wheezing sounded almost like laughter, and her sharp grip finally dug into my waist. Suddenly, she howled and let go. I flipped myself back over to see Lori had snuck up behind her with a pair of plastic forks and stabbed them deep into the woman's eyes. The woman scratched and clawed at them, backing away from us for a moment. Lori hurriedly limped over and helped me up, and we lumbered our way out of the house as fast as we could. As we neared the front door, she howled again, and we heard footsteps running towards us. She was gaining on us. She was too fast. We weren't going to make it. We came up to the door, and I grabbed the handle. As I did, a sudden yank spun us around. The woman had an angry fistful of Lori's hair. Lori let go of me and jumped with her good leg as high and as hard as she could. The foot of her bum leg collided heavily with the old woman's face. She lost her grip on Lori's hair, and I grabbed her as I fell, both of us tumbling backwards, rolling down the porch stairs and into the front lawn. I sat up as quickly as I could, waiting for the woman to pounce on us once again, but she never did. For some reason, she never crossed the threshold of the front door. She simply glared at us from the shadows, her gray eyes glowing in the darkness, blood pouring down her cheeks like tears. Lori jumped up and dragged me to my feet. "Are you ready to go, or do you want to take pictures?" she asked. We turned and limped our way back home. We never called the police. We've also never been back for Lori's backpack. Whatever lives there can stay there. We're happy to call it a draw.